Good morning. It is good to be with you this morning. Before I get into our text, I want to talk about Father's Day for just a second. We've prayed about it and mentioned a little bit. On behalf in here, thank you for all the fathers this morning. Thank you for the lessons you've taught us, the blessings you've given to us, the lessons both of life and of spiritual matters. Many times you've heard me say, my daddy always used to say. I got a whole bunch of them stuck back in the back of the memories. That's what one of the gifts my father gave me. And thank you, fathers, for those gifts. But I also realize as I say that, this day is also kind of like Mother's Day. For a lot of people, for some people, this is a really hard day because their image of their father is less than perfect. It's not very good. And if you're one of those people, I'm very sorry. And one of the things I hope that you can take away this day from that in here is that you have a Father in heaven who is like the father in the story of the prodigal son, a Father in heaven who runs to you and in love throws his arms around you and says, you're mine, and I love you, and I'm going to keep you. So happy Father's Day to all of you. Okay, now, Father's Day done. You guys ready? You guys ready? Thank you. Okay, just making sure you're with me here, all right? Barry Bonds, Sammy Sosa, and Mark McGwire. Anybody see any of them play? Yeah, right? I'll never forget one of the time, that my wife and I, we were in St. Louis and saw Mark McGwire come to the plate. It's the only time I've ever seen this, any sporting event. Mark McGwire came to the plate, and the entire Busch Stadium stopped what it was doing. Right? When I say entire Busch Stadium, I'm including the beer vendors. The beer vendors literally stopped, turned around, and sat down. Everybody wanted to watch this. They were giants, remember? And then one day somebody asked them, have you ever taken performance-enhancing drugs? And they lied. And their reputations were destroyed. The witness of their lives were destroyed. And nobody cares now. Nobody cares about their baseball. Nobody cares about their lives. Because all they remember now is they didn't live a transparent life. One of the things we're doing this morning is our subject for discipleship and cost is transparency. And living transparent lives. Living a life, in the dictionary definition of transparency, is allowing light to pass through to see things clearly. All right, you with me? Allowing light to pass through so you can see things clearly. We're talking about living transparent lives this morning. Is living our life in such a way that people can see what's inside us. Because what's inside us is Christ himself. What's inside us is Christ dwells within you. And it's living that way and living that life. So we're going to get into the Bible a little bit this morning because I want to get into the Bible. I'm basically a Bible study teacher in here. So grab your Bibles in here, all right, and open your Bibles up. First book, Genesis chapter 3 is where we're going to start. No, we're not going to cover Genesis no, we're not going to go Genesis to Revelation this morning. They're not giving me that much time. Genesis chapter 3. So as you're getting over there, kind of set you up, make sure we're all on the same page here. Remember, Genesis chapter 1 and 2, God creates the heavens and the earth. He creates Adam and Eve. He brings them together. And God says, it says in the end of chapter 1, it was very good. And everything is great. Everything is probably beyond great. Genesis chapter 3 rolls around. We don't know whether it was the next day or what time frame in here, but Genesis chapter 3 rolls around. And we find Eve in the garden by herself, and Satan comes up. And follow with me from verse 2. And the woman said to the serpent, "We may eat of the fruit of the trees in the garden. But God said, you shall not eat of the fruit of the tree in that is the middle of the garden, neither shall you touch it, lest you die." Well, she kind of adds a little bit in here, but that's really not the point. She kind of doesn't quite get it perfect, but that's okay. Because the punch of this is coming in the next verse, verse 4. But the serpent said to the woman, "You will not surely die. For God knows that when you eat of it, your eyes will be open and you will be like God, knowing good and evil." Did you catch this right here? Satan tells a bald-faced lie. Satan tells a bald-faced lie. And Adam and Eve realize that they've blown it. They realize that they've fallen for the lie. And what they tried to do is they try to hide it. They're trying to hide from God. They're making clothes to hide themselves. They're putting up these masks to hide the reality of what's going on. They're putting up these things to try to keep from being transparent. Satan is accurately called the father of lies. He brought lies into this world, and we buy into it. We buy into these lies and not living transparent lives out into this world. Because we're all really good at trying to create masks or create the lies. Because it's easy to sit there and say, if people really could see inside me, if people could really see the mess that I've made of my life, if people really could see how dirty and gunky it is inside of me, they would run for the hills. And we live with that lie. Part of living a transparent life, part of living this transparent life as a disciple is fessing up and saying, yeah, my life's a mess. I've really messed it up. Pastor John's favorite word that he's used, right, is knuckleheads. Or screwed up knuckleheads. The part of being transparent is living that transparent life and saying, yeah, I'm a screwed up knucklehead. I'm not pretending. My life's a mess. And I'm not going to try to cover it up with lies. Because that's what the Jews did in Jesus' day. You want to go to Matthew chapter 5. That's where we're headed next. The Jews in Jesus' day sat here, and that's exactly how they looked at it. They had this mess in here, and what they did is they constructed this web of, as Matthew 5 calls it, this web of oaths to try to cover it up, all right? Matthew 5, verse 33, our text. You have heard that it was said to those of old, you shall not swear falsely, but shall perform to the Lord what you have sworn. But I say to you, Jesus' words, but I say to you, do not take an oath at all, either by heaven, for it is the throne of God, or by earth, or his footstool, or on. In other words, what the Jews have done in this Jesus day is they have constructed this elaborate system of oaths. And some are by God, and some are by the temple, and some are by earth, and some are by various different things in here. This elaborate system of oaths to convince people that what they were doing was telling the truth. So if they call down these various different oaths, they can say, okay, this person's telling the truth because he called an oath. He's got to be telling the truth. And so they construct this around, all right? Maybe an example how well this worked, okay? Peter, one of the disciples of Jesus, hangs out with Jesus, but Peter's also a good Jew. Peter knows all this stuff too, all right? And so fast forward to the last night of Jesus' life. Fast forward to Jesus' trial. When they come in, and Peter says in here, when they ask him, it says in Matthew, then he began to invoke a curse on himself and to swear, I do not know the man. You catch it here? Peter is not just idly swearing here. Peter is invoking this system of oaths to try to convince people that what he's saying is the truth. But it's not supposed to be that way for us. As disciples of Jesus Christ, it's not supposed to be that way. Jesus says in Matthew 5:37, he simply says this, let what you say simply be yes or no. Anything else, anything more than this, comes from, it says evil, you can add evil one in here, comes from the evil one. Simply this, what we say in our speech and how we present ourselves is a reflection of who's inside us. It's a reflection of what God has placed inside us. It's a reflection of Him. And so Jesus says, let your yes be yes and your no be no. Because we live a life such that we're living in transparency, we're living in the truth. So when people look at us, they see Jesus. And they see Christ. Because they shouldn't need any more than that. Okay, last one, I promise. Romans chapter 8. Right? Romans chapter 8. Because it gets back, it's important to understand why we say this and what the basis for having this truthfulness and living this truth and living this transparent life. It's important for us to realize what the basis for this is, and Paul sums it up beautifully in Romans 8. Romans 8, verse 11, he says, if the spirit of him who raised Jesus from the dead dwells in you, he who raised Christ Jesus from the dead will also give life to your mortal bodies through his Spirit, read the last part with me, who dwells in you. Christ dwells inside of you. Mentioned it a second ago when we talked about communion. Christ has come to you in the Lord's Supper. He comes to you in baptism. He comes to you in word, and he lives and dwells inside of you. He has placed himself in you. It means you're a child of God. You're a status in his kingdom. You're a member of the king. As I tell the children at communion, you're a son and a daughter of the king because he dwells in you. And Jesus says, live so people can see it. Live a transparent life. Let me give you an example of what I mean. Is at my mom's house, she lives on a lake, and she's got a whole wall of windows. They're floor-to-ceiling windows, and I look out at the lake, and she keeps them clean in here. And they're gorgeous. It's beautiful, especially in the summer, in the fall, when the sun is setting down through the trees and coming in. It's just absolutely incredible sitting there and just looking out in there. But there's one window. Oh, those double-pane windows. And one window has got a little crack in it somewhere along the line, and it's foggy. Tell me it's because it's seal's been broken, you got other gunk in there and you can't see. So beautiful, beautiful creation. Nothing. We live transparent lives. So when people see us, they don't see us, they look inside us and see Christ dwelling inside you. That's how we're to live as disciples. Live in such a way that people see Christ dwelling inside us, and doing that by living a transparent life. So I was talking about this with members this week in nursing homes and passing through with people, and kind of what I was talking about, it's the typical preacher stuff, kind of talking through next week's sermon with people in devotions during the week. And the first question people started asking me was, so is it ever okay to tell a lie? Is it ever okay to tell a lie? Dietrich Bonhoeffer, in his writings, asked the exact same question. Is it ever okay to tell a lie? He's talking about transparency. And he says, is it ever okay to tell a lie? And he uses this example. If you don't know Dietrich Bonhoeffer, he was a German pastor, was basically imprisoned by the Nazis all through World War II. His resistance to the Nazis. And he asked this question. You're living in Nazi Germany. And one afternoon, there's a knock on the door, and you go to your door, and you open the door, and there's 3 Gestapo officers, Nazi Gestapo officers, standing at your door. And they ask, are you hiding any Jews in your house? And you're sitting there, and you know that there's 3 families in your basement. Is it ever okay to tell a lie? Because it's easy to rationalize it. It's easy to sit here and say, make the ends justify the means. And it's easy to sit here and say, one little lie is going to save all these lives. But I'm going to let you struggle with this one in here through the week this week. But remember, disciples live transparent lives. We live the truth. We live the truth that's been placed inside us. The other question people have been asking this week is, so what about oaths in court? It was interesting talking about this, and Judge Ben Lewis was in the 8 o'clock service. Give you a little, make you a little unsure of yourself, bet Judge Lewis is in here. But it's basically this. Is it ever okay to say oaths in court? The easiest answer to understand this is going to this, is sitting here saying, is that there's people out in the world that don't understand where we're coming from. They don't understand this transparency issue. They don't understand that when we say yes, we mean yes because it's Christ, we're showing off Christ. There's people out into the world in here that don't understand that. Now, in places like courts, they're based upon those kinds of things. All right? So, you're in court, have at it. Go ahead. If it gives them their assurance, that's fine, because we know where we're coming from. We know we're speaking the truth because that's Christ dwelling inside us. But in dealings with each other, dealings with friends, dealing with your neighbors, dealing with things in here, we speak the truth. We speak the truth because it's Christ dwelling inside us. It's Christ living in us each and every day. So I started this sermon talking about Barry Bonds, Sammy Sosa, Mark McGuire, and you can throw Lance Armstrong into this as well, same story. So I'm not going to end it with that one. I'm going to end you with a different one. How many have seen the movie Les Miserables? Show of hands. Because I know, back up. Yeah, okay. There's a few people I know that have seen it, not raising your hand, but that's okay. All right? Catch you up on the story. It's about a guy by the name of Jean Valjean. Jean Valjean is a prisoner, he is a prisoner in revolutionary France, and he spent 19 years in prison, and he gets released from prison, breaks parole, and he kind of goes on the lam and hiding, and then through one act of grace, through an incredible act of grace, he gets a new life. He gets a new life, and it's set up in here, and he's kind of halfway in hiding in here under this new life, and going in and living out this new life, and he's become respectable. He's a businessman. He's the mayor of community, and everybody's looking up to him. And then one day, the police officer who's been chasing him for all this time comes up to him, not realizing it's Jean Valjean, comes up to him and says, "We caught Jean Valjean. And we're going to punish him. We've caught him." And so our hero here, the real Jean Valjean, is faced with a crisis. What do you do? Because one little lie, somebody can rationalize it. Didn't even have to lie. He just not to open his mouth. And he's off the hook. And all the people that's worked around, and all the people that is working for him, and all the people that he's touched is going to be great. One little lie. And in the movie, and in the play, it's the song, "Who Am I?" Or I won't sing it for you. Your blessing. But he sits there and he says, he's not Jean Valjean. I am. And from that moment on in the movie, you see the blessings radiate out from that truth. The blessings radiate out for all those people around him in whose lives he touches. He is living that transparent life. Disciples of Jesus have one better. We live a transparent life. Because when we live a transparent life, we live in such a way that people see Christ dwelling inside of us. They see Christ in us. Amen.